Hello, this is the IVB Man. We're going to talk about my experience. This is from the 2016 wildfire here in Chattanooga, Tennessee. To be more specific, the Flipper's Bend designated fire in Soddy Daisy, Tennessee. So, to get started, at the time we actually had, before that, we had two separate events, but I'm going to be mainly talking about the second, like the last main event. The first time, the month before the big one happened, there was some smaller sized wildfires that at the time wasn't too alarming, I feel like, but it seemed like there was just a little bit of response on it. Like the National Guard was using their Blackhawks to drop buckets of water, and I think maybe a few like the state parks firefighters may have been working in it or something, but it wasn't anything too big. Then, in I think it was November, was it the week of November the 14th, somewhere around there, 2016, so that week, another fire started back in the North Chickamauga Creek Gorge, which, keep in mind, was a student at my high school, and we were still going to school during the fire too. Now I'm talking about the second main event. So that one was big. It was a really big fire. At one point, it was still growing. The Tennessee Division of Forestry, Tennessee State Parks, and some other agencies set up basically a command post for the second fire, because the humidity was in the single digits basically, or low, very low, near 10%, and everything was super dry. We were in an extreme drought at that time, designated by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, National Weather Service, that they designated us an extreme drought. We're actually in a drought currently right now. So, but there was no water nearby whatsoever, none, and because the creek runs right smack in between where the gorge is, in between two sections of mountains, basically, in my opinion. And it basically just lit off. It was super big and really hard to contain. I remember when that one started the first day, it was just kind of smaller at that time, the first couple of days when it was first starting. And so we didn't really have any concern, but after a couple of days of it jumping, and it got really giant, massive. And we'll talk about in a little bit some of the resources, assets they had to bring in and some other stuff. But first off, I remember at the time I actually wasn't driving, thank God. So my father was at the time taking me to school, because it was 2016. I was a sophomore, I think, and we were driving to school, and you couldn't see a foot in front of you, basically, because it was so smoky, even with your high beams on. But no, they still sent us to school, which was a bad call, in my opinion. But it was a dangerous call because it was right across the road from the school. I mean, it was really close. It's close enough to like pass the comfort zone. Even like like say probably out west, they would have been evacuated way before that. Like they wouldn't even have school going on near it because this was big. I can't really remember the acreage, but I mean, it was in the thousands of acres were at one point burning. And it burned part of our trail. And at one point we were still in the classroom and we were actually looking out the window. I remember this, and it looked. I know trout fire doesn't like to likes to go up, but it like seemed like it was coming down, and we were watching it looked like it was getting closer to the road, and we were like asking our teacher, "Why are we still here?" And he was like, "Well, I don't know," but yeah. And then we also it was kind of cool because. How many times is that going to happen? Like they were literally landing helicopters in front of the school. And I mean, I vaguely remember the teachers were saying at that times, like, just try to ignore it. But I mean, how can you ignore that? I mean, really, they're going to land a military helicopter in front of the school in a field right across the road. Are you serious? You cannot ignore that. That's just awesome. And I'll put some pictures in the video of the different things and the fire and the helicopter landing. Hopefully, they brought their scout helicopter. I remember that. The National Guard. No, it was a National Guard helicopter. Basically, I think they were pretty much transporting personnel for that. They had Blackhawks dropping water again, but that really, I don't think that was working too much. At one point, it was so bad that they had to call in air tankers, and I remember that they were flying like super low to the ground, and at like one point, like flew under the power lines, and I was like, oh, that's a little close and super dangerous because there's not a lot of clearance to pull up, or if something bad happens, there's no room for air, so it's really dangerous. And I mean, they were doing multiple passes in a 4-engine small aerial tanker. But they had that. They basically had the whole setup of with basically a scout plane setup where they would go ahead and basically drop I think they drop a little bit of whatever. Like the mark where they need to drop, so when there's a plane behind them with the full retardant or water, knows exactly where to drop it. They had that. So I think at one point there was some C-130s coming in. They had tons of firefighter. Why did the lights just go out? Sorry. Let's see. At one point, they had to call in firefighters from Alaska, I think, and like out west. And Lord help us, because they basically had nowhere to park and had to park right. They had to park where our new high schools are, in a field. But so. After the fact, we actually were able to go out. Well, no, they wouldn't let us go out on the trail for a good. I think it felt like a year after it happened because they were worried about stuff. I don't blame them, but you could literally walk out there, and if you were to say look at the ground, it's at our what we call our second overlook. You can't really see it now as much though, but at that time, for a good while before it really everything, I'll tell you some benefits too. You could still see the black, and then instantly it's like life, like new growth, like stuff that was kind of good actually for the environment. So the fire, in my opinion, was kind of a good thing for the environment for a little bit, like the plant base, not the air, because it is really terrible for the air pollution. I mean, at one point, it was blowing downwind where I live, so because it was on the mountain and we live in the valley, basically. I remember at one point, I was actually staying after school and watching them just drop stuff. Helicopter. They brought in the Sky Crane helicopter, which I feel like is a rare sight. I mean, but I remember it was really publicized too. Oh yeah, one thing I should state is we were in the building one of the days, and it was like super smoky outside, and this is key important to the story. And we were in under the doors. The doors aren't really sealed. They used to not be really sealed anymore. So it was able to get in through the cracks. So the smoke got into the building and set off the alarms. And basically, they literally sent us outside into where there was even more concentration of smoke, which was super, super stupid. They made us stand out there for 30 minutes to an hour, breathing it, with no mask, no protection whatsoever. Then they're like, well, I guess we'll just send them home. So, I mean, seriously? Come on now. Talk about judgment calls. They didn't make a really good judgment call there. Now, I know this has happened before where they've called a blizzard, and I actually happened to look at the radar, and there was nothing on the radar anywhere near us. And it was really hot outside, basically, really warm, not hot. But I'm actually still wanting to go into do wildland firefighting, to do stuff like what they did, but hopefully record it eventually. But thank you. Make sure to hit the subscribe button.